Hello guys, and welcome back to the History and Politics of Thought with me, Ryan Gladman. It's episode 5 today of the Gcse 91 Edexcel History, Superpower and Relations course. For further information on the Cold War, I recommend reading some of this book, John Lewis Gaddis, The Cold War. Very insightful, offering perspectives from both the Soviet Union and the US, uncovering documents that were not available to the public at the time, that have come out recently, and secret documents, and there's lots of images in here to help with your understanding of how to understand different perspectives offered by Gaddis. So it's very useful to accompany your studies, as this should be. These videos should be helpful to accompany your studies as well. So this is about £10 at Amazon, so I recommend getting that if you're interested. But anyway, I hope everyone's okay. Another day of COVID-19 lockdown. Just got to keep going through it and keep confident and keep abiding by the rules, basically. But yes, anyway, today's episode 5, and today we're going to look at a bit more about the Warsaw Pact, as we did in the last episode, and the consequences of this. So, because the Warsaw Pact was created 6 years after NATO in 1955, the progression that the Cold War had started to take, as we said before, was from two ideological indifferences and divisions into two officially separate organisations. So NATO and the Warsaw Pact, countries led by the Soviet Union and the US, two officially distinct organisations at work within Europe against each other. And because of this distinction, something called the arms race intensified, which basically means the improvement of nuclear technology and other types of technology that both countries accelerated due to this division. And it largely came out of the fact that one side wanted to be a lot larger and better than the other side. So the arms race really took hold in the immediate years after World War II, because by 1949 the Soviet Union had developed and tested its own atomic bomb, and the US had started to do the same, but they were surprised at how early the Soviet Union was able to do theirs. And actually by 1953 the Soviet Union had actually tested the H bomb, which is the hydrogen bomb, which is the first nuclear bomb officially tested post World War II, and this was a few months after the US test. So both countries were at roughly the same stage. And by 1953, so later that year, both the US and Soviet Union possessed both the hydrogen bombs properly tested and functioning, ready to be put into practice. And both countries were hoping to get bigger and bigger to develop their weapons, to basically develop this idea of nuclear deterrence, which is putting another country or organisation off because of your own nuclear capabilities. So deterring someone else from attacking you because they have fear that if they attack you, you'll attack back with something bigger and better, and it will basically it will damage them more than they will damage you in the first place. And this nuclear arms race would accelerate throughout the Cold War. So from that very point on, from World War II all the way to when the Soviet Union collapses in 1991, it would be something that grips the Cold War and accelerate it into something that is a war level impact. And the destruction it didn't necessarily cause, but the destruction it could have caused was very evident for a lot of European powers, and it still exists today. There's a lot of nuclear deterrence in place. There was actually some hope that the two powers would slow down their arms development, and this hope was from many of the European countries that really didn't want to commit to either side, and were worried that if they didn't, then both of them would forcibly take over their countries, or they would be involved in some kind of nuclear war. So something had to change in that sense, because many countries didn't want to be involved. However, in 1957 it changed completely. The situation in Europe changed completely when a Soviet rocket called Sputnik was launched into satellite above the Earth, and it could orbit the Earth at about 1.5 hours. And the US hadn't done it so far, so they saw it as a massive threat to themselves, and they immediately decided to increase spending on their missiles and placed missile bases in some European countries close to the Soviet Union in retaliation to this. So although Sputnik was a satellite launched into orbit, the US responded with more missile production and placing those missiles in countries that were close to the Soviet Union as a response, indicating they are still committed to trying to develop their own arms to save the countries of Western Europe from communism and the Soviet Union influence. And because of this, because the response that the US gave, it meant that the Sputnik was the first point where it accelerated the arms race. And the US, as we said before, they were starting to fear the Soviet Union was overtaking them, so they responded with missiles production. And this whole sort of cat and mouse chase with the Soviet Union or the US leading, and both the other one fearing that the leading power would overpower them in a nuclear war, made both countries even more competitive and even more willing to develop their own arms and missiles capabilities. You have to remember that both of these countries are doing this solely. It should be solely for purpose of defending Western and Eastern European powers against any revolutionary or tyrannical leadership, such as what the US thought the Soviet Union was, and vice versa. However, it was basically a selfish interest. It was a selfish interest of both countries, and the race they had developed together was not a European. It was not a European wanted race at the time. However, I think a lot of countries saw the need in it to occupy both the Soviet Union and US foreign interests, and because both of them want to extend their power, many countries recognised this was the way that they were going to do it. So they had to accompany this drive of both of those countries by compromising with those countries about holding missiles on their nuclear bases in their country, closer to either the Soviet Union or the US. So a lot of countries got involved, maybe begrudgingly because they didn't want to. However, they recognised the importance of doing it to stop a nuclear war from actually happening. And this was a threat that existed throughout the whole of the Cold War, the threat of nuclear war, and that's why the Cold War, in its title being cold, it was a war, but the threat nearly never inflamed itself and never actually got hotter, if you want to say that. So that's why it's called Cold War, and the threat of nuclear war was that threat that made the Cold War an actual war. More of a political and policy-driven war, however, a war nonetheless. So yeah, that's basically the arms race and how it accelerated, coming from the back of the Warsaw Pact and NATO being established. And then this leads nicely on to the Hungarian uprising, which was the first uprising to come out of the Cold War, which will be in the next episode. And that should be the end of the first topic phase. And then we should move on to 1958 to 70 period. So yes, that's it for today. That's episode 5. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe if you are new. Leave a comment down below if any suggestions of new videos or of your reaction to this video would be greatly appreciated. So thank you for watching.